You look the same.
You look old.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and I am going to break down the Anakin and Ahsoka scenes from Ahsoka Episode 5. Now, we're not just going to talk about the easy-to-spot Easter eggs. We already did that in yesterday's video. Today, we're going to be diving deep into the meaning of this sequence, what it means going forward, and answering the question, was that really Anakin's Force Ghost? And I'm going to explain why this episode was so important and why Ahsoka has transformed into Ahsoka the White. And also, I just want to say thanks everyone for watching the channel, and the ScreenCrush team and I just finished new designs for our merch store that we are so proud of. There is the Master and Apprentice Family Tree poster or tapestry, the High Ground shirt, and my personal favorite, Just Say No to Death Sticks, Go Home and Rethink Your Life. Now this is along with the other great shirts and products that we have up in our merch store right now to celebrate all the nerdy stuff that we love. Shopping ScreenCrushMerch.com at the link below is a great way for you to support what we do here at the channel. Thanks everybody for watching and your continued support. Now, let's dive deep into what the heck is going on here. So a little bit of backstory on Ahsoka first. She and the other Jedi Padawans were essentially child soldiers during the Clone Wars, and we don't really see much of them coping with the traumas of war. But Ahsoka has been living with that trauma for her entire life as a Jedi. Worse than that, the Clone Wars were ultimately pointless. Billions of people killed. Also, Palpatine could rise to power and wipe out the Jedi Order. And Ahsoka feels complicit in the Jedi's destruction. She walked away from Anakin and the Jedi Order in the final days of the Clone Wars.
I can't stay here any longer. Not now.
And in this show, we see her haunted by that decision.
Before the end of the Clone Wars, I walked away from him and the Jedi.
Now, for years after, she worked to form the rebellion, and she believed that Anakin was dead. But in the show Star Wars Rebels, she discovered that he was alive.
The apprentice lives.
So I'm going to detail their fight because it actually lays an important groundwork for this episode. So at first, Vader was kind of reluctant to fight his former apprentice.
We need not be adversaries.
And Ahsoka starts off this duel very gung-ho, after Vader says,
Anakin Skywalker was weak. I destroyed him.
She replies with this badass line,
Then I will avenge his death.
But after she breaks Vader's mask and she can see Anakin's face,
Anakin,
she softens.
I won't leave you. Not this time.
So this fight is very telling for how she sees Anakin, and it's revealing her worst fears about herself. This episode is all about her confronting those fears, confronting the darkness inside of Anakin, confronting her own guilt, and confronting this darkness inside of herself so she can grow past it. Now, I should also talk about this spirit realm she finds herself in. Now, I know a lot of you watch the show Star Wars Rebels, but hey, my mom hasn't watched it and she's watching, so let me just explain this to her for a second. So the world between worlds is essentially a gateway between all of space and time.
Pathway between all time and space. He who controls it controls the universe.
The last time Ahsoka was in this place, she was pulled here by Ezra Bridger, who was saving her from her aforementioned duel with Darth Vader. So, I don't actually think that she is necessarily in the world between worlds in this scene, because the world between worlds is filled with gateways and portals that lead to all points of time and space. But there are no portals in this realm, so this could simply be a kind of afterlife, or all of this could be happening within Ahsoka's mind. Maybe physically she's underwater while she is experiencing visions in the Force. And Jason Syndulla is able to sense these visions, which is why he knows that she's still underwater. Now, it is very possible that Ahsoka fell through a portal to the world between worlds that was underwater, just like the portal we see in the show Star Wars Rebels. But to tell you the truth, I really hope that they never explain what actually happened here. I would like to think that Ahsoka communicated with the Force in a very deep spiritual way, and that we are just seeing the physical manifestation of her communion with the Force.
That seems kind of weird and esoteric for Star Wars person.
Not at all. We have seen Force visions in Star Wars for years. There was Luke's vision in the cave, Rey's vision in the cave, Rey's second vision in Rise of Skywalker, for some reason. And of course, there were the Force visions of the Mortis gods in the show The Clone Wars.
Hey, person, why are you holding that onion?
Oh, it's my lunch. You want some?
Oh no, person, did you just bite into a raw onion?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Why didn't you cook it?
Oh my god, you can cook an onion? I didn't know that. In fact, I don't know anything about cooking, which is why I use Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit and the sponsor of this video. This is actually my real lunch. It's a cheesy bacon ranch shredded chicken with portobellos and garlic broccoli. I have no idea how I could have possibly made this myself, but Factor makes it easy to eat a healthy, balanced diet. Factor chefs work hand in hand with dietitians to create more than 34 chef-prepared meals. Everything from keto to calorie smart to vegan, and now there's even a gourmet plus selection. And it's delicious. So you can skip the grocery store with a Factor meal that is delivered straight to your front door, always fresh, never frozen. The meals are ready in just 2 minutes and they're only around 550 calories per serving. Plus, they are way cheaper than takeout. And they have new cold pressed juices, shakes, and smoothies. So guys, I've been using Factor pretty much all year, and I've noticed a very big difference. Like, there are days when I start work at 6 a.m. and I finish at 8 p.m. and I just forget to eat, or I run into the kitchen and grab an onion. But now, Factor meals help me to get through my day with no hassle. Just 2 minutes, no prep, no mess. So I highly recommend you give Factor a try. Head to Factor75.com and use my promo code ScreenCrush50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring this video. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, right, the Mortis gods. So this was a really weird 3-episode arc in the Clone Wars that actually laid the foundation for this episode of Ahsoka. Long story short, Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan arrived at a world called Mortis, where there were 3 Force beings: the daughter representing the light side of the Force, the son representing the dark side, and the father who represents the balance between the two. So like during this time, the 3 of them all experienced powerful visions. Obi-Wan spoke with Qui-Gon's ghost for the first time.
Obi-Wan, have you done as I asked? Have you trained the boy?
Anakin saw his mother and also his future as Darth Vader, while Ahsoka also met her future self, who warned her that Anakin would be her destruction.
There is a wildness to you, young one. Seeds of the dark side planted by your master.
Now, there are other parts of the story that are important that I'm going to talk about later, which explains her eventual transformation. But actually, her conversation with her older self is what's really key here, because this wasn't really her older self. This was the son, who represents the dark side, exploiting Ahsoka's worst fears. You see, all through the Clone Wars, Ahsoka knew that there was a darkness brewing in her master. He killed at least 2 people in cold blood.
Who will strike first and brand themselves a cold-blooded killer?
And Ahsoka also suspected his love affair with Padme.
I understand wanting to walk away from the Order.
I know.
And of course, his attachment to Padme is what eventually led to his downfall to the dark side. So all throughout the Clone Wars, Ahsoka actually found herself being tempted by those same kinds of attachments. For instance, she actually fell for a boy named Lux Bonteri. And like her master, she distrusted the Jedi Council, which led to her leaving the Jedi Order. Just like Anakin ended up leaving the Order, just not as dramatically. Now, like I said, I don't know if this is literally Anakin's Force ghost. There is a short story by Mike Chen in the book Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. And this story is about Anakin's dying moments and how his spirit passed into the Force. And how, as his spirit passed into the Force, he felt this like inner flame of life. And then Obi-Wan's Force ghost slowly called him back, so the 2 of them could have like a heart-to-heart conversation where Anakin expresses regret over his mistakes. But that story ends with Anakin receding back into the Force. Now, some Jedi, like Qui-Gon, Yoda, Luke, and Obi-Wan, learned a technique to tie their consciousness to the living Force, and that let them linger in the land of the living after they died. Anakin never learned that technique, so it would make more sense if Anakin's spirit receded back into the cosmic Force. But in The Rise of Skywalker, we also saw Rey communicate with the voices of Jedi past, including Anakin, who told her,
Bring back the balance, Rey, as I did.
The point is, this could be Anakin's spirit actually in the world between worlds, or this could all be in Ahsoka's mind as she's dealing with her past trauma. Either way, it doesn't matter. What matters is that Ahsoka uses this experience to process her guilt, and she emerges as a stronger Jedi, Ahsoka the White. So let's actually talk about what happens to her in this realm. It begins with Ahsoka saying that she remembers, and Anakin saying,
That's good. It means you still have a chance.
This, again, is similar to that Anakin short story. When Anakin dies, he is able to hold on to his past life, to remember his old experiences. So then, Obi-Wan is able to pull him from the void. The first thing Anakin offers is to finish Ahsoka's training. Now, I should note that by the end of the Clone Wars, Ahsoka was like the most skilled Jedi warrior, total badass. She even defeated Darth Maul in a duel. So there was little she could actually learn, but she had not yet passed the trials to become a full Jedi.
Oh, what are the trials?
Well, the trials are the final spiritual journey a Padawan has to take to become a full Jedi Knight. Obi-Wan mentions them in The Phantom Menace.
Obi-Wan is ready.
I am ready to face the trials.
And in Luke's case, his trial was tied to Darth Vader.
You must confront confront Vader.
But Yoda never said kill Vader. He said to confront Vader. Luke ultimately won by surrendering to Vader, which allowed his father to feel empathy for his son, and he was able to redeem his father. Luke became a Jedi by learning that he could not control the Force. He couldn't fight his way to victory. And in this episode, Ahsoka learns a similar lesson that I'm going to talk about later on. So, do you remember that warning that Ahsoka's future self gave her?
You may never see your future if you remain his student.
So, over the years, Ahsoka has allowed herself to do some really dark things. She implied to Hu Yang that she tortured Morgan Elsbeth.
How did you get her to tell the truth?
Let's just say I didn't follow standard Jedi protocol.
She's also been pretty dour this season, like not at all like the Ahsoka we remember from the Clone Wars. And like other Jedi in Clone Wars, she is on a slippery slope that will slowly lead to the dark side. Essentially, Ahsoka is afraid of turning into her master, and Anakin's lesson is showing her that she cannot run from that fear. She has to confront that fear head on. Ahsoka is a warrior who is tired of war, but Anakin's lesson is that if she wants to stay in the world of the living, she has to keep fighting. Now, that does not mean that she has to keep going into battle and fighting people. The fight between her and Anakin is showing her that in order to make sure you don't succumb to the darkness, you have to work every day to be a better person, to keep yourself balanced, and to not torture old ladies for information about a map. So this is an internal battle that requires Ahsoka to forgive herself and to ultimately learn to trust in the Force. So this lesson begins with Ahsoka showing Anakin that she has become a better lightsaber fighter than him. But then he shows her that this lesson is not about fighting with lightsabers, it's about confronting her own emotional trauma. So he attacks the ground she stands on, a way of saying that she is about to confront the emotional instability that she has built her life upon. Anakin is going to force Ahsoka to go back in time, to confront the past traumas that have created a foundation of guilt in her life. That's right, Anakin is giving Ahsoka some much needed therapy. Then we go to one of her first battles as a child soldier, the Siege of Ryloth. Now remember, up until the Clone Wars, Jedi were adamant that they were not soldiers.
And I can only protect you. I can't fight a war for you.
We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
And yet, they joined this war without blinking to protect the government, even though Yoda, immediately sensed something was really off about all this.
The dark side clouds everything.
So the Padawans at the temple up to this point had been taught that as Jedi they would be diplomats or peacekeepers, and now suddenly they all have to adapt into becoming soldiers.
This isn't what I trained for.
So seeing the horrors of war marks the beginning of Ahsoka's survivor guilt.
It was my fault. They were following my orders. I got them killed.
Which she would carry with her all the way through this last shot of her in the Clone Wars. So then Ahsoka sees this awesome flash of Vader as Anakin charges into battle. And this is showing us that the Clone Wars were actually the great sin of the Jedi Order. The Clone Wars corrupted the Jedi, leading some, like Pong Krell or Anakin, to fall to the dark side completely. Others, like Barriss Offee, became terrorists. But worst of all, the Clone Wars began a time when the Jedi placed more faith in the government than they did in the Force.
Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy!
Whereas Obi-Wan probably should have said, my loyalty is to the Force, not a government. So Ahsoka's entire career as a Force user has been tainted by this expectation of fighting, of always being in a war. And the use of the mist in this episode is also symbolic of the fog of war. So in wartime, people are forced to make incredibly difficult, sometimes immoral decisions that can cost soldiers a piece of their souls. And this is what happened to Anakin and the entire Jedi Order. So the next memory shows Ahsoka at the height of her powers during the Clone Wars. At the Siege of Mandalore, she led a battle against Darth Maul's Mandalorian forces, and she defeated the former Sith Lord in single combat. But the reason we see this moment in this episode is because while Ahsoka was doing all of that, on Coruscant, this was happening.
I pledge myself to your teachings.
So this gets to the core of Ahsoka's guilt. She thinks that had she stayed with Anakin, had she been there with him, he would have never turned to the dark side and the Jedi would still be sticking around. In fact, in this flashback, Anakin even highlights his absence.
I don't know this battle.
This was the Siege of Mandalore. We had parted ways by now.
So this is Anakin as he appeared the last time Ahsoka saw him, when they parted ways just before he went off to rescue the Chancellor at the start of Revenge of the Sith. So this is the moment that Ahsoka looks back on and always thinks, I should have been there for my master. So those feelings of guilt, of shame, they are weighing down Ahsoka, preventing her from balance, preventing her from fully connecting to the Force. These feelings are also a path to the dark side. For instance, Anakin felt tremendous guilt over his mother's death. He felt like he should have been around to protect her, and this led him to thinking that he should be the most powerful Jedi ever.
I will be the most powerful Jedi ever.
So this is what Anakin means when he says,
You're part of a legacy.
Now, look, Anakin says this to mean a good thing. She is part of the noble Jedi Order. But for Ahsoka, she can only hear this and think of her own guilt.
My part of that legacy is one of death and war.
Again, this was foreshadowed by her vision on Mortis.
There is a wildness to you, young one. Seeds of the dark side planted by your master.
Like we show in our Master and Apprentice family tree, when you trace back this lineage of Masters and Padawans, two people in Ahsoka's lineage, Dooku and Anakin, became Sith Lords. So this was Ahsoka's great fear that she saw in that Mortis vision. And then she flat out confronts her master for his past sins.
You are more Anakin, but more powerful and dangerous than anyone realized.
Anakin replies,
"Is that what this is about?"
Meaning that she is too focused on the past. Now to show her this, Anakin transforms into his Sith appearance. Red saber, yellow eyes. He has become her greatest fear, her worst nightmare, the personification of her guilt. Now, he easily overpowers her at first because Ahsoka is ruled by her guilt, and he pushes her into this mist to force her out of the past and to confront her guilt in the present, not as a child, but as a grown woman. We hear Vader breathing as Anakin flashes back and forth between his two forms, and even his voice is a hybrid of Anakin's and Vader's.
You lack conviction.
And this is where this duel gets so good.
I King love it!
Remember when Luke had a vision of a duel with Vader. Now in that vision, he won his duel in the cave, but in the process, he saw that by fighting, he would become like Vader himself. So Ahsoka tries to fight off Vader as a warrior, using her lightsabers, but this is futile. No Jedi could ever defeat Vader.
Well, except Obi-Wan.
Yes, but Obi-Wan beat Anakin by using his own emotions against him. His arrogance, his anger, they became his downfall. In a straight up fight, Vader is way more powerful than Ahsoka, so he disarms her pretty easily. So then, how does she win? By taking away Anakin's saber, by taking away his ability to fight. Now by doing this, she is actually removing her own guilt's ability to control her emotions. She doesn't strike Anakin down, she tosses away his saber, and she says,
"I choose to live."
And this means to live a true life, a life free from guilt, a life where she can accept her larger role in the will of the Force. And then notice how Anakin steps away, lowers his head, and when he opens his eyes, they're no longer yellow. But he also seems unburdened now. The dark side has lost its hold on him, which is symbolic of how the dark side has lost its hold on Ahsoka. Suddenly we see that the stars beneath her have become a pool of water. Now water is often used as a symbol of the unconscious mind, or of our emotions. The water rises here, and the symbolic meaning is that Ahsoka has reconciled with her unconscious mind. Her unconscious mind is rising to meet her conscious mind. She has confronted the fear and guilt that she has buried for so long, and in doing so, she has purged the incipient dark side from her soul. But there's also a very literal meaning here, as Ahsoka is actually literally in water in the real world. So after she awakens, she begins to wear a white blanket and later a white robe. Many people, including us, have pointed out how this seems inspired by Gandalf's transformation from Gandalf the Grey into Gandalf the White.
Do you say what now?
Well, in Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf the Grey Wizard dies, he is reborn into Middle-earth as the White Wizard, as the most powerful of his order. Now, look, really long story short, the gods in the afterlife chose Gandalf for a special purpose, to be reborn as a new, pure entity who would have the power to challenge Saruman and Sauron. And to really explain Ahsoka's transformation here, I have to revisit those Clone Wars episodes on Mortis that I talked about earlier. At the end of that story, the son, the dark side guy, goes fully out of control. He fills Ahsoka with the dark side, drains her life force, and then he kills his sister, who is the embodiment of the light side of the Force.
Wait, do these people literally represent the good side and bad side of the Force?
Not really. As Sabine explains, they're symbolic.
These three figures appear throughout the Jedi's recorded history.
They're archetypes.
But as the sister is dying, Anakin is able to draw her life force into Ahsoka. So now, Ahsoka is kind of possessed by this being that is like pure and good. This is also explained by the sister's spirit animal, an owl, following Ahsoka around.
I've seen you before. Yeah, whenever Ahsoka was around.
What about the owl?
A servant of the daughter, or possibly the daughter herself.
But for years after the Clone Wars, Ahsoka can never fully embrace her role as an avatar of the light side of the Force because she was too bogged down by this guilt and shame over her past sins. But now that she has purged all these emotions through her vision, she is ready to become her true, pure self. So remember how Luke's ultimate lesson was to learn to surrender?
But why must you confront him?
Because there is good in him. I felt it.
Ahsoka's ultimate lesson is also to learn how to surrender. She is not trying to control the Purgle or tell them what to do through the Force. She actually has no idea what they're saying or what they're doing. Now, in our Easter egg video, I talked about how the belly of the beast is a trope in myth and fiction, often where the hero is at their low point. But the belly of the beast is also the point of transformation. Pinocchio dies saving his dad from Monstro, and so he is reborn as a real boy. In the Bible, Jonah escaped the big fish and became a prophet, and Ahsoka has to enter the beast's mouth to earn enlightenment. I mean, think about it. She enters the mouth of a giant animal, which is the ultimate sign of faith and trust, because now she has to trust in the Force to guide them forward. Up until now, Ahsoka has always been trying to control the people in her life, like how she tried to control Sabine.
Hey, hold it steady!
Remember, learn to anticipate.
Now's not the time for a lesson!
I mean, Anakin did the same thing. He wanted to have ultimate control, to control everything, even life and death. That led to his downfall. But after Ahsoka learns to surrender control, she's finally happy.
Hera, I'll find them. I promise.
So I think the Ahsoka Tano that we see toward the end of this series is going to be a very different character from who we've seen before. She's going to be more understanding, more balanced, and ultimately, I think, a lot more fun.
Stop calling me that! You're stuck with me, Sky Guy.
And hey, just a reminder everyone to take the hassle out of eating healthy, give Factor a try. Head to Factor75.com and use my promo code ScreenCrush50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Well, what did you think of this episode? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.